What is up, friends? Earlier today I made a video about my foot pain, my chronic foot pain, excruciating foot pain to be honest, that I've had mysteriously for the last year. I want to tell you a little bit about that story, and I want to clean up my presentation because earlier I was really just rambling. I was in the middle of a lot of research that I continue to do and that I will share with you, especially the fruitful outcomes of that research. But I really want to make this message more coherent than most of my videos because I want people to hear the message. And although sometimes I think you tell me, and I do believe, I understand, that sometimes when I brainstorm with you, it can be useful because it will link you to unpredictable leads in the way the body is all connected. For this topic and things that are really important, I want to make sure I'm organized. So I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory on me and my feet, and then tell you a little bit more about what I've learned about hormones. This is going to be a bit of a digest. Always in my videos, check the description below because I will link all things that I refer to. I will clean up errors I make, and usually, especially if it's a rambly video, there will be a summary of the most salient points. I'm going to also make another video about the nutritional elements that I've learned in this journey to rehab my feet that I think is really underappreciated in understanding chronic foot pain, whether it's heel bruise pain or plantar fasciitis pain, which is going to be the focus of this video, more or less, tendon issues, connective tissue issues. So there will be more to come on this, but I want to bring you up to speed with me, my injury, and why I think hormones are the punchline of this story. So first of all, as I explained in the last video, if you suffered through it, I'm an active 45, almost 46-year-old. Active I tell you that I was active because I have strong feet. At least I had strong feet, and they've stayed quite strong through this journey, as much as they've also been weakened by the fact that I can't use them as well because they're in pain. But I say that because strong feet we don't think of as being injured feet, and they're more resistant to injury, and a lot of plantar fasciitis-based injuries, which I will link below, a whole rant I made about plantar fasciitis and some of the misinformation online about it, about how less than useful information about it. But plantar fasciitis tends to be an injury, a stress injury to the connective tissue of your foot from abusive forces of it being overly stretched when the muscles are not sufficiently strong to protect that connective tissue against the stress. It can be chronic stress because your foot just is constantly collapsing, or you have a job where you're just standing dead weight on your feet all day, which is very stressful for the foot because there's not as much muscular activation to protect the foot integrity, the structural integrity, and therefore the connective tissue takes a lot of the brunt. So that's a more classic presentation of a plantar fasciitis pain foot. The foot pain I have had for the past year parallels plantar fasciitis symptoms, and I'm going to tell you all of the things I've done over the past year that I did do, or that I should have done, or what order I should have done them in, to rehab my feet according to the best practices that I know as someone who is obsessive about foot strength and foot health for plantar fasciitis. And then I'm also going to tell you about what I've learned about my hormones and how, for me personally, given the nature of my foot pain and the mysterious fact that, or the elements of it that made it really mysterious, in that I have strong feet and I have high arches and rigid feet, and I didn't have a job where I had to just stand dead weight. I didn't have other red flag indicators as someone who would be susceptible to this type of foot pain. So, number one, how did I hurt my feet? Backstory. Okay. I am an active dancer, hiker, avid walker, etc. Been wearing minimalist shoes for at least 5 or something years. And before that, I have a long history of orthotics and really overly restrictive shoes that I've recovered from, or that I had recovered from, and I was on quite a journey proselytizing about that experience because I think it's really positive for anyone that can to strengthen their feet and let their feet work more naturally than traditional shoes do. So if you have a foot type and if you are physiologically, it is something that you can do safely, which for most of us it is, but it doesn't mean it is for you. So I don't want to pretend that everyone can go minimalist, all right? Because it can be injurious for some people, and let's not just romanticize that, okay? But for me, I was having great success with minimalist shoes, and I was dancing hard, barefoot, every day, and doing all my workouts, squats, body resistance training, workouts, barefoot, like I said, hiking and walking, and even actually doing some running, some trail running in minimalist shoes. And that is up until the day I injured myself. How did I hurt myself? The story is absurd. So I love taking care of my feet because I think they are one of the gateways to our health. And so I heard, it was actually my brother, I don't want to make him feel bad, but he was talking to me about, he started getting therapeutic massage. He would take advantage of the fact that my niece had a tutoring session that gave him a little window and he could get like some work done on his back. And my brother is super fit, like just real, muscular guy, could really use some body work to help relax, decades of strength training, right? So, and not necessarily a lot of stretching. So he inspired me to take care of my feet in the sense that I was like, I could use a massage, and if I don't get anything else massaged, I should at least massage my feet. And I should have just massaged my own damn feet, but instead, I purchased one of those, it's like a machine you can put under your desk that you rest your feet in, and it had compressive sleeves and like rods that would swivel and churn and massage the bottom of my feet. Now, it felt great. I used it like 3 times. I used it very few times. Felt good, and I didn't have any ill effect until this one time that I had gone on a trail run, which was stressful for my feet. I'm not going to say that it wasn't stressful for them. I didn't run a long distance, probably I walked probably 5 miles, and that was typical, and of that I probably jogged 2 miles or maybe 3. Okay. So not a huge distance, and I had progressed towards it. And like I said, I was dancing barefoot and strength training barefoot, so it wasn't like out of the blue for my feet. Nonetheless, with my high arches, and that's stressful on my feet. So they were probably a little tired and inflamed anyway. But that was something I had done a number of times, and I never woke up with foot pain the next day. That's not to say I wasn't testing the actual safe stress limit level for my connective tissue. So I'm just putting that caveat out there. On top of that, I then did the massage thing, thinking, this is perfect. At the end of this run, this is going to be great for my feet. Well, my strong suspicion, it's just kind of no other explanation, is that, and on that day that I used the massage thing, of course, I had to rev it up to the highest level. And I do remember it felt good, but it felt like a deep itch in my feet. It felt like, the more the little, I don't know what to call the little massagey things, but the more it dug into the bottom of my foot, especially around the heel, the more it was like an itch. I don't know how to explain it. It wasn't painful, but it was a weird sensation. And I actually think it was damaging my feet because I don't remember if I had any pain right after I used it, but the next day I couldn't walk. And I was so upset. So now we're going to get into what I should have done. Let's go straight there. What I should have done was rest my goddamn feet. You got an injury, don't make it worse. I should have rested my feet. At the time, I didn't have dogs. I was in between my senior citizen dog that you will see in some of my other videos, my big orange man, and these 2 little angels behind me, one of whom I know is at the door, just it's time for my walk. But I didn't have a dog, so I didn't have a reason to walk other than my own ego and the fact that I enjoyed it, right? And I was probably a little bit in shock and having an emotional reaction to the fact that I had fucked up my feet, which are so precious to me, doing something so stupid as a massager. It was like I was in denial of the extent of the injury I created. Don't let your emotions be in the way of your judgment when it comes to listening to your body. Your body doesn't owe you therapy. Your body, if you need a rest day, whatever, don't let ego of any kind get in the way of what you need to do, right? That goes for, that's a big part of how people get injured and stay injured. Okay, we're addicted in some ways to our exercise, and of all the things to be exercise, activities, whatever it is, sport, of all the things to be addicted to, it's probably one of the better ones. But especially when you're my age, but at any age, right? It doesn't mean that it should be your emotional outlet. You have to have the wherewithal to take care of your body when it needs you to, and for your own good, because you're just going to dig your hole deeper, which I did. But I want to say, especially for athletes, right? Like, people stay chronically injured because they can't let go of their training, and they're so worried about like losing strength gains that they just keep pushing themselves. You're just, for any step forward you're taking way more back. So I should have rested, and I probably would have recovered. Who knows? Hindsight, who knows? But I probably would have recovered relatively quickly, or I would have had the best chance of recovering quite quickly if I had just done nothing, like done as little as possible, rested my feet like crazy, put them up, maybe some ice heat, things like that. Could have brought up, gone out, pulled out all the stops at that moment, gotten some collagen, gotten some vitamin, type 1 especially, type 1 collagen. We'll talk. Like I said, I'm going to do a whole other video about nutritional campaign I'm on for my feet. But red light therapy, all the things. But first and foremost, rest and just get out of your body's way. It has an acute injury. Give it the best chance possible to do its thing. There's no place for exercises at that point. You shouldn't try to strengthen your feet or keep doing your routine thinking, oh, it's a connective tissue issue. I can still strengthen the muscles. No, the muscles connect to the connective tissue. Dingbat, right? So what I'm alluding to is I kept walking, even though it was extremely compensated. I was limping and therefore jacking up my whole body through trying to walk, even though my feet were in pain. So that's number one. I'm doing more damage elsewhere in addition to undermining the ability for my foot to heal and making it worse in the process. I kept doing foot strengthening stuff because I was on this big campaign at the time of a whole thing I want to tell you about is how I really, before this injury, I was on a mission. I was really strengthening my feet, and I have some great strategies for strengthening one's feet when they're not injured, when they're not acutely injured, and I'll share them. And I'm really looking forward to getting back to them now that hopefully my feet are on the mend for the first time. I have hope of that in a year. But at the time, I kept just compulsively doing my foot exercises, and I'm squeezing my fist to show you because I was just squeezing my feet and strengthening my feet all the time. Calf raises, things like that. I was right in the middle of, I had been doing like straight-legged, single-leg calf raises per video I learned from a physical therapist who works with dancers. Like, this is stuff that's good for your feet when they're not injured. But because I was like really peaking in my strength, I just couldn't let it go. And actually, the other thing is those exercises, they didn't seem like they hurt, right? They didn't physically hurt. I can't remember if they felt great, but they didn't feel like they actually hurt. So it wasn't really obvious to me that they were making things worse. But of course they were. Rationally and logically, I knew they were. Sorry, my camera keeps trying to shut off. I've never used this app before. I hope this works. Anyway, I know it's just shit. The whole camera, the whole space I live, I know. It's my life. Okay. So that was number one. I didn't rest from walking. I tried to keep dancing. I was also really practicing. I was getting good at some stuff, so I want to keep practicing. That was hard because that really did hurt. So that sucks. And I kept strengthening my feet. Like, I kept squeezing my feet before I would get out of bed in the morning, things that were like my routine. I also kept squatting. I kept doing like single leg, body resistance squats and resistance training because that didn't seem like it hurt, right? Whereas walking, I should have known, and I kind of did know was stupid because it hurt. It was punishing. But some of these exercises, including squatting, didn't hurt, right? My foot could just hold its own on the ground. But as you know, and as I definitely know, like, you know, probably for a variety of reasons, but I've told you this in my other videos, your feet, so I should really know, your feet are very much connected to your hips, and you're never moving them in isolation. So even if you think your squat is, you're mostly working up, upper leg and hip and glute muscles, your foot is really having to do a lot of work too. So it was injurious. So I should have stopped all of that cold turkey for at least 2 weeks. You can find some of this protocol for what I should have done in a video from Dr. Emily Splichal, you know, one of my mentors, guru, podiatrist, that she explains like tendonitis versus tendinopathy. I will link it below. And I have since followed all her protocol, but, you know, too late. And in the moment, oh, I wish I had seen that video. I didn't realize I had tendonitis. I didn't even look up search terms for that. I just figured I had like a bruise, right? Anyway, part of what happened is I might have just had a bruise at the beginning, and then it evolved into a tendonitis and then a tendinopathy because I had it for so long, right? Tendonitis is really more of a short term, 6 weeks, 3 months, I think is the cap, and then it becomes a nopathy, technically speaking, because it's chronic. And that makes a difference. Your body's healing mechanism is not as robust once you've damaged the tissue and then continue to damage the tissue while your body's trying to heal. Right? It actually structurally changes the nature and quality of the healing collagen, right? The reforming that your body's trying to do those tissues. So it's bad, bad news. I really messed a lot of that up. So like I said, I'm going to have a whole video about like what I wish I had done right from the beginning, but you can find, because some of this is not included in Dr. Emily's video, because, you know, it's not on her radar. But I will, everything that she explains I would have done, plus a few other things, like some other nutritional stuff, but that's really the biggest thing that she doesn't talk about as much. She does talk about it, but I go a little further. So, and I would have finally known about my hormones. Because, okay, so fast forward a whole fucking year. What did I do? I made my feet, the actual initial bruise I exacerbated. So in addition to just bruise straight under the bottom of my heel, which we can talk about, I'll tell you more about the specific nature of the issue because I think that is a sign, an indication of a ligament laxity issue, not just a bruise, but that is a location. I think people with ligament laxity in their feet experience pain. And I'm telling you that because ligament laxity is associated with hormone levels, which is where we're going. But I didn't know that at the time. But anyway, I morphed that pain into plantar fasciitis-based pain. So now I wasn't only getting pain right in the bottom center of my heel, but also at the classic plantar fasciitis attachment point, it's sort of the front of the heel, where the fascia has to web from the ball of the foot to the arch, and it's a very common stress point for the plantar fascia. It's where it connects to your calcaneus. I mean, lots of attachments in your foot to the plantar fascia, but that's a really common one for people to have symptoms, right? And if you have plantar fasciitis, you're like, yeah, no shit. Okay, so that's a hot spot. But you can have plantar fasciitis throughout the arch of the foot, but that's usually a locus of pain. So I got that too. Even though I don't have the feet, like I was saying earlier, I have rigid, high-arched feet that should not be susceptible, in theory, to classic plantar fasciitis. I started to get it because the plantar fascia and the connective tissue, just the tendons of my feet, were all inflamed in a mess, just became one big cluster of pain and a mess. And at one point it was just my right foot, and then it was my left foot, and then it was both feet, and then they would go back and forth per my limp, per the day of the week. Okay? I noticed trends. I would sort of get off the hamster wheel, get out of a pain loop, and then it would just spike. And I could not perceive a real reason based on my activity once I finally did try to start resting. I couldn't perceive why. And I did because I was aware that there would be some hormonal relationship with, like, I knew about young women athletes in particular having different rates of ACL injuries at different times of the month. So I did notice that my pain was not ebbing and flowing because it wasn't gradual. It was like I would wake up with pain and be like, oh, sure enough, it's like day 14 of my cycle or day 15 or 16 of my cycle, and my estrogen just tanked, and boom, I'm limping, okay? So I finally picked up, I did notice that, and that was a little bit of a mask because that made me think that it was my cyclical hormones that were the bigger driver, but really it was that my overall hormone levels, well, in addition, I shouldn't say really, but mostly the biggest drivers of my overall hormone levels were so low. And then on top of that, there was the micro swings, you could say, of the month to month. But I didn't think about larger picture hormone levels because I was more focused on the month to month. So those were some big things. I also didn't think as much about nutrition. I've said I will make a video about nutrition, but before I really figured out, like, okay, it's got to be my hormones, I did have another mini breakthrough that really I got excited about, but then was sort of a false hope, because I started taking the supplement manganese. Be careful, friends. Like I said, I'm going to make a whole video about this because I almost fried my brain on that shit out of desperation. It comes with a warning. You can definitely take too much. Some minerals, some vitamins don't have a really hard upper limit. Like, you'll just pee it out or whatever. If you take too much, no, this is neurotoxic. Don't fuck around. But I took a whole bunch of it and it helped. And then I took a whole bunch of it for too long, and then I was like up for 3 days. Insomnia is one of the symptoms of toxicity. So don't do that. But I still do, having said that, I was deficient. I'm confident I was deficient. And it's another thing that, again, is not one of the things in Dr. Emily's videos, but it's among the nutritional protocols that I would have jumped on in a reasonable dose and for a reasonable length of time when I was first injured. So again, we'll talk about it. So that made me think, oh, this is more of a nutritional thing, until I realized, okay, there was a real upper limit. Like, it made me a lot better. I took a massive dose of it, and it made me feel my feet hurt a lot less. It was like overnight, like, oh my God, this is it. Which is why I was so tempted to keep taking it at a level that I knew was not going to be good for me for very long, because it made such a difference. But then there was a really hard ceiling. Even if I had continued to take it at the high level I was, there was a ceiling on the pain reduction. And so I still was not getting to 100%. I was so much better. I was like, tears of joy type of better, just from a few days of taking it. But in the end, it was not the end all be all. But again, that was a little bit of a red herring that kind of distracted me, took my eye off the ball of like, no, this is a hormone issue. So again, throughout the year, there were other signs that I had more global connective tissue problems. One of those was I dislocated my wrist doing basically nothing. Again, a massage. Massage is dangerous apparently for my body, but I was massaging my own freaking wrist, friends. Like, I don't know if you've ever like massaged the muscles between the ulna and radius. It feels great. Like, you can rub a lacrosse ball in there. It feels really good. Well, don't ask. I was massaging my right arm with my left hand. I'm right-handed dominant, so in theory my left hand's not that strong. But I subluxed my radius just with my left hand. Like, and I didn't even feel it. It didn't even hurt. And then it wasn't until I went to put weight on my arm, like in like a push-up position with my wrist bent back, that it was all jacked up and jammed. And over the course of the year, I slept. You sleep on your arm, you sleep on your hand a little funny, and it's like it numbs and whatever. Try not to do that. I'm much more aware of these things now, but multiple times I woke up and I was like, oh my God, like I really hurt my wrist. I really hurt myself doing that. Also, I have gymnastics rings that I love, and I don't do anything super crazy on them, but I do love to just do basic strength training stuff, pulls and hangs and the works, right? And there was 2 days that doing the basic routine that I had done, not even a routine, but just the same activities I always do, I didn't do anything crazy, and my hands were purple like the color of this fleece, okay? In this digit in particular, where the weight of the bar, right? And in my palm. Okay, both hands. And again, it was like, what the fuck is going on with me? So I started looking at like autoimmune things, and bruising, and all I found was like, you're susceptible to bruising if you're on like blood thinners and prednisone, steroids and things like that, which I'm not. And I have a fairly anti-inflammatory diet, which is recommended. And I'm not trying to go back to Dr. Emily like I'm throwing her under the bus, but I'm just saying, as an authority on this, she highly recommends. And as would most people, if you have an itis, you have an inflammation in your body, an anti-inflammatory diet is going to be supportive of that. And so, fish oil and pungent herbs like garlic and onions, turmeric, vitamin C, quercetin. I can't remember what she recommends. I probably just kind of went off the deep end with some of those, but the basic ones are like fish oil, turmeric. Those are like really well known herbs for anti-inflammation. So I was taking fish oil, but I backed way off. When I got this bruising, I was like, whoa, maybe I'm like really anti-inflamed and I need a little more inflammation. I do eat meat. I do eat eggs. I eat dairy, not as much. But if I have yogurt, I eat it. And I don't have any digestive problems or anything with it. And I'm saying that because those things tend to be inflammatory, right? I also eat a lot of fat, also relatively inflammatory. So I shouldn't have been so chronically anti-inflamed that I was bruising, okay? But it made me think maybe I was, because I didn't have another explanation. And when I did these searches on like, susceptibility to bruises, it was just like blood thinners and prednisone was like the biggest thing. No one mentioned that it could have to do with your hormone levels. At least not that I found, not directly. I'm not going to say it's not out there, but I didn't find it. And I scrolled. And I was worried about myself, so I was searching. I didn't find it. So finally, as I explained in the last video, what made me think, what made me think about my connective tissue and hormones? Number one, I got a scar from a dog bite from a dog in the background who, he's an angel. My rescue pitty, and his sister is behind me, so just give me a second, but you'll meet them. He's an angel, but in a rage, protective rage of me and his little sister in the face of a legitimately threatening, menacing, actually aggressive dog. He swung around just like seeing red. He swung around because I was holding him back with my leash, and his mouth just ran into my leg, and he, very quickly bit down and then snapped out of it, realized that I was not his target. He barely compressed. I had a little bit of bruising, but really, as you can see in the scar, it's just the bottom teeth that snagged into me. I posted a picture of this. So I didn't have substantial bruising, but I had a little. But it is to say it was a minor bite. That's my point. It was a minor bite. And yet my body, the bite, the actual puncture wounds healed easily. No infection, no problem. Very quickly, actually. The skin had healed without issue. But there was this mass, this hard raised, and at one point it was reddened and very painful mass, like dense, hard scar tissue mass that I point to in that video. It's already better just from the hormone, the DHEA and things that I've been taking to supplement my hormones. So the day that I realized that there was this correlation between the pain of the tissue and that bite wound in my feet is the day I realized I'm making subpar. I'm collagen. The collagen, the connective tissue in the tendon, the new tendon cells that my body is trying to create is bad. It's bad quality, and it actually is painful. The tissue itself is painful. So that was what I ended up starting to look into, and that's when it was more clear to me that what I knew, the little things I knew about ligament laxity and age-associated ligament laxity, which is a thing, right? Age-related arch collapse, so flat foot. You can look up these search terms: age-related flat foot and age-related posterior, posterior tibialis tendinopathy. Okay, you have posterior tibialis muscle that goes from deep in your calf, underneath your foot, and it's a primary muscle for holding up your arch. And so in addition to having an arch that collapses as we age, which isn't, no one says this, they call it age-related, but they don't tell you it's actually hormone-related, right? It's your hormone, the lowering hormone levels that is actually the associated cause to this arch collapse and the tendinopathy of the muscle that is otherwise trying to hold your arch up, right? So whether the arch collapses or the tendon of that muscle can become very strained and inflamed. And we know that these are things that women experience as they're transitioning to menopause. Also things like rotator cuff injuries. There's an OBGYN that just posted a story about this. I don't remember the stats, but I did know from just outside life knowledge that frozen shoulder is dramatically an injury that women suffer from, a condition that women suffer from. And it's extremely painful, inflammation and mobility restriction of one's shoulder, okay? It mostly affects women at like 45 to 55. So again, highly correlated, highly associated with when their hormones are lowering. So it's known that connective tissue has a relationship to our sex hormones, but I did not realize the degree to which it is. And in fact, men and women have receptor sites for testosterone and estrogen throughout our connective tissue. In fact, throughout a lot of our organs. Estrogen in particular is found in organs and tissue, we'll say, all over the body, receptor sites for it. And so having low estrogen or low testosterone, but I don't want to pretend I know as much about that, but it's definitely also a factor, not just for connective tissue, though I know it is for connective tissue because it's responsible for the tensile strength and creating rigidity in our connective tissue, which is a good thing to an extent. And then, for example, especially men, but I'm assuming the same thing would happen in women, although maybe not if it's mitigated by her estrogen, but in men who are abusing steroids, right, or taking supraphysiological levels of testosterone, they have tendons that are more susceptible to rupture because they're so tense, right? They're not sufficiently elastic. So there's this relationship between the elastic quality that estrogen gives and the tensile strength that testosterone gives that optimizes to a healthy, productive connective tissue or tendon, right? Needs both those qualities. Tendons need those qualities. Ligaments, to a lesser degree, need some elasticity. There's very little elasticity to ligaments, but they have a little. And then there's this spectrum of like muscle, tendon, ligament, cartilage, fascia throughout the body. Anyway, I'm digressing. I apologize. It is to say that our sex hormones impact those tissues. And, we go off on another tangent about how that should have been obvious to me, given that like women give birth and estrogen and the relationship estrogen and progesterone in the woman's body, in a pregnant woman's body, evolving to adapt for birthing and the ability of her connective tissue to stretch, which is injurious often to her. And I think a lot of pregnant women would tell you that they have foot pain and back pain as a result of increased ratio of progesterone and relaxin and prolactin and relaxin. Prolactin is about breast milk mostly, but I think the increase in all three of those tend to a body that is more pliable, connective tissue that is more pliant and potentially injury prone. Estrogen, on the other hand, is important for the health of the connective tissue. It helps keep it more elastic than testosterone would, but the ratio in a woman's body of estrogen and her other steroid hormones, I'm out of my league, friends, but it is to say they all play a role. Okay, they all play a role. But what I was saying is that I should have been more aware that like a woman's body is very potentially susceptible and affected by her sex hormones. But I never had a baby, and I've never thought about. I really don't never thought about this. I've never wanted to think about it. If anything, in the past, things that are fertility enhancing or like stay away, I'm cool. If a supplement was known to be like, oh, this potentially could interfere with your fertility, I'm like, sign me up, it's all good. Which is unfortunate because a lot of my decisions probably impacted, chipped away at my overall estrogen levels. A number of things in my medical history, right, when I was very, very young, or quite like 13 or 14, I was put on oral contraception to re-stimulate my period, which had stopped. I was sick and skinny at the time, and they needed it to come back. I don't remember how long I was on it, but I was on it at a pretty young age for some time. Right, sometime. And then, of course, as a dumb 20-year-old, I went on that shit like it was candy for decades, right? Because again, I wasn't concerned about my fertility, and if anything, they make you feel like it's protective of certain cancers and certain things. There are definitely risks to being on it, but that was not really magnified. It wasn't really something I was worried about. I wasn't worried about the specific things that they were telling me to be worried about, like stroke or blood clots, because I was like, I'm athletic and I don't smoke and I don't have the risk factors, blah, blah, blah. And I was young. So meaning stupid, short-sighted. I would never just be like, oh, stroke. Like at this age, please don't think I'd take things that lightly. But I was reckless with my health on that. And I was more worried, and I think this actually a lot of young women could relate to this. I was more worried about how I was going to feel going off of it. And I was like, no, I've been on this for so long. I don't know how my body's going to feel without it. I don't even want to try. And I was really worried there was going to be bad effects. Like I was going to gain all this weight and get all this acne and all these things. And as a matter of fact, this is, again, sort of a sidebar comment, but it was the best thing I ever did. I felt amazing going off of it. It's just like, hallelujah. Lessons learned. But having been on it for so long likely was the major kicker to suppressing my endogenous production of hormones. And like I said in the other video, there's been signs over the course of my life, like my receding hairline, chronic UTIs, which is not an overshare if you're okay with it. Okay, but I'm bringing it up because I think chronic UTIs go under the radar as being associated with low sex hormones for a lot of women who are otherwise just given antibiotics or never really get to the root issue. I mean, I was just given an open prescription for antibiotics, which I was smart enough to not take. I found herbal mechanisms to like help with my prevent UTIs, but yeah, no one ever. You would have thought that would have raised a red flag, because why do I know that now? Why do I know? Why do I know? But my doctor didn't seem to know at the time that UTIs were a red flag for chronically low estrogen levels, because of the research I'm doing in the menopause community. Because among women who are menopausal, it's flagged as something, as a red flag that. Not a red flag. They know their estrogen level is tanking, but it's a symptom of it that they acknowledge. When I was in my 30s and going to the doctor for chronic UTIs, no one was like, right? You'd think they would have at least checked my levels. They didn't. Anyway, it is to say I've been living with suboptimal hormone levels for probably all of my adult life, most of my life probably, and over the course of this year, there were a number of signs, like the bruising, the hyperlaxity, just having no structural integrity to my connective tissue, which is a sign of low testosterone and low estrogen. And I'm just super relieved that I finally figured out, like, okay, this is most likely the actual cause to this protracted foot pain. My foot pain is a symptom of a hormone problem. And that line of reasoning is being, I don't know if you've seen my poor dog, that line of reasoning is being validated by the fact that now that I'm taking DHEA, which is a hormone precursor, it's a natural supplement, over the counter, available, thank God, because I don't want to have to fight for it. And I'm so glad I can do the personal experimentation with it, because in just the short time that I've been taking it, I am quite confident. I don't want to jinx this. This is really important to me. But I'm confident that if I can make enough endogenous sex hormones, endogenous meaning my own body making them as opposed to having to take it from an external source, that I have hope of rehabbing my feet. And that's really important to me, because at 45, I don't want to not be able to walk without pain. And I don't want to be able to never dance hard again, like really dance all out. I live for that. I absolutely live for it. So it's very important to me to figure out what's wrong with my feet. And in the process, I hope to educate you about it. And honestly, I hope that this can be a massive lead for a lot of people who are otherwise suffering with tendon and connective tissue pain, and they have not thought of this because no one has brought it to their attention, and they're like me. They're not menopausal women who are highly underserved, by the way. Their needs are highly underserved. So I'm not like, oh, you're so lucky to be a menopausal woman. No. But I'm in a bit of a no person's land, a no woman's land, because I'm not old enough to be menopausal. No one's got on the radar those types of health conditions. And I'm not a young athlete who they're just looking at my cycle as being a month-to-month thing. I am at sort of a weird place where have the combined effect of I still have menstrual cycle that is monthly cyclical, but also in the context of the lowering levels. And that's like a decade or more of people's lives. So, I mean, honestly, it probably was something I should have addressed in my 30s when, like I told in another video, or in the other video, I hurt my Achilles tendon, and it took forever to heal. Forever, like 5+ years before it was like symptom free. And I strained an adductor. I learned a lot from, right, in terms of my body, the way my hip works, and the way my legs work, but it took so long to heal. These connective tissue issues injuries have taken so long to heal. But I don't have another body, so I don't have a basis of comparison. But with hindsight, I'm like, yeah, I'll bet that part of why that took so long to heal was because I had such low hormone levels, so it just wasn't rehabbing, right? But I was young enough that the levels weren't so low that it could heal. Now I'm at a point where without this DHEA, after this year, I can tell you, I was not healing. Not healing. It's been devastating. It's been super dark just to be, no matter how long I rested. That's what I should tell you. I did rest. I didn't walk for a month. I should insert that into the video earlier. But when I was telling you how at first I didn't walk, or at first I kept walking, well, after a couple of months, maybe less than months, but probably 2 months of trying to keep walking, what did I do? Oh, shit. Sorry. This is all out of order, but first I got soft shoes. I got Ultras. And so they were no heel drop, whatever. They were sort of minimalist but squishy. And that was a bad solution. That honestly, it allowed me to just, for whatever reason, it made me walk really hard. It made me like dig into the shoe harder to like feel the ground. So that sucked. And I actually got a neuroma from that, which is like between the bones of the metatarsals in the feet, because of the compression that I was putting as a result of both the limp and the squishy shoe. I wish I'd said this earlier in the video. I'm sorry, friends. But I'll put in timestamp. But I got neuroma pain, so I'll be telling you about that in the videos I make about how to deal with your plantar fasciitis and neuroma. Because now that I've had experience with them, I can share. So that's, in closing, oh my god, this video is so long. That is what I've had a chance to learn over this year. So I want to cut this off because I can't believe how long I've talked about this. I wanted this to be short and clarifying. Apparently it's a long story. Thank you for watching. I hope it's useful. The end. That's all. I hope it's useful. Hard stop.